I wish you could see what this looked like. Like this shot on the VHS, not through a VHS into here, looks so good. It looks so good. But you know what I was gonna do for this video? For this video, I was gonna wear these. These are what I used to wear. This is literally like the fit that I used to wear when I would do insane amounts of cocaine. I would have these glasses on, and I had a mustache way thicker than this, and I had a grill, and it was just two. It was a rose gold grill, and I would literally just walk around like, "Hey, what's going on, guys? Yeah, I got a business proposition for you." I ran a record label, and it was literally just like me doing cocaine and just like talking to black dudes. But with this, on this cam, this is OP. This is overpowered. I look like what Tim Dillon wants to be, you know? That's what I look like. All right, let's get the video going. Let's get a little too much. This is a little too much. Am I allowed to do this, guys? Or is that too much for you? I look crazy. I can't do this. But before we get started, I am going to entirely calcify my pineal gland, so that way I can better communicate with you. I'm not saying that you have a calcified pineal gland, but some of you definitely do. So it's probably not you. It's probably the other you I'm talking about. You know what I mean? So let's chug this bad boy. Strasvutia. Oh, it's so painful. Remember when they used to say that Red Bull has bull piss in it? I feel like a Taurus. Like, what's the point of being self-employed if you can't have a little fun? You can't have a little bit of funsies. Also, somebody was saying that I'm green screened. Dude, this is a room. These are real objects. This is literally an actual bull mask that's eating a depiction of me because I'm having a rough go of things right now. Okay, let's get to the video. So in 2022, the word esoteric became a part of the internet zeitgeist's lexicon. Okay, everybody started saying everything was esoteric. Everything's esoteric. I love esoteric stuff. So esoteric just means hidden. It's just like the word occult. Occult technically means hidden as well. The new word that I'm seeing thrown around constantly as of today is metaphysics. What is metaphysics, you ask? And why are so many people misusing what this word actually means? Metaphysics is a lot different than physics, okay? So let's get into it. So physics is the study of the physical universe that can be measured, okay? Things like speed, gravity, the way atoms interact. Metaphysics refers to a philosophical branch of philosophy that focuses on things that cannot be measured. Things like ethics, what is existence, what is consciousness, love, ideas of morality. The ultimate question that was originally raised by Socrates and his pupil, what is the good? Okay, now I see a lot of people who, use this word and they don't use it right. So that's what metaphysics is. If you ask, what is the nature of love? What is the nature of ethics? You're asking a metaphysical question. Now, here is what is interesting. Metaphysical frameworks exist within philosophy and within esotericism, within the occult, and within various religions. All of these things have esoteric frameworks, metaphysical frameworks. They have esoteric frameworks as well, but metaphysical frameworks. So if you're, for example, in Christianity, explaining what the Trinity is, that is sort of the way God exists to Trinitarian Christians, that would be a metaphysical framework because you're explaining something that is not necessarily physical in nature. Now, here's the thing. I don't need people in the comments, because this is actually going to happen, people going, well, technically, you can actually measure consciously what love is. There's actually a pragmatic solution. That's not what we're talking about here at all, okay? the actual branch of philosophy that is metaphysics is started basically in Western philosophy by this dude, Aristotle. This is Aristotle's Metaphysics. This was my book from the University of Oregon. And it has sentences in it that are a little bit much to people who don't study philosophy, such as the ontology of the unmoved mover. In fact, let me read a couple of these wordy sentences for you. Having is meant in many ways in one senses as keeping something in accordance with something's own nature or impulse, for which reason a fever is said to hold of a human being or a tyrant to have a hold of cities. So metaphysics, if you have like an actual, real, insanely in-depth metaphysical framework, every word you use needs its own definition. So this is why philosophers usually go crazy. They usually like become crazy people. Like if you know the story of what ended up happening to Nietzsche, he saw a cow get executed and he basically went completely crazy and he lost his mind. He also had syphilis, so that could have been another one. So in Aristotle's Metaphysics, everything he says becomes defined. So a whole means that of which no part is absent out of those of which have said to be a whole by nature. A part means one sense in which is a quantity that is divided in any way whatsoever. To be from something means in one sense that a thing is made out of its material, right? So this is what metaphysics is. And if you have your own metaphysics, okay, it is sort of like having your own understanding of nature. You have your own idea of what it is. If you have a metaphysics of love, depending on your level of being a philosopher, you might have an entire linguistic framework on how to describe what you believe love is. Okay? If you have a metaphysics of the universe like I have, you have a very loose idea of the physical nature of reality. Because I have one, and it differs from the traditional idea of reality. So I thought I would make this fun video because the word metaphysics is being thrown around so much. And actually reading Aristotle for 45 seconds for the first time in like 10 years makes me feel so inadequate. I don't know if I want to continue making this video, but I will because I love you guys and because I have to. Now, another important distinction with what we're going to be describing, what I'm going to be describing in this video, it is a metaphysical cosmology, okay? Because I'm basically describing what I think the universe is constituted of. Now, what makes this a metaphysical cosmology is because we are dealing with things that cannot necessarily be measured. They are things that are immeasurable. Remember, physics operates within the material order, matter, energy, time, causality. It asks how things happen, and it asks what has laws to describe those happenings. Basically, physics cannot get deep enough for where I'm going and where I'm heading, because I'm a deep diver. I'm a holy diver. I'm like Ronnie James Dio, holy diver, and we're diving deep into the ocean of Izzy's cosmological brain. This is because what I talk about goes before what is able to be measured, before matter and before time, before causality itself. Now, this is not me patting myself on the back a little bit, maybe just a little bit, you know, maybe a little bit, but it's not. It's really not. Because yeah, I'm actually like super insecure right now after reading. Like, dude, Aristotle went so hard. He went so hard, dude. Oh, wait, what is this? No, we found a little letter? Did we find a letter from my college days? Oh, it's a homework assignment. Philosophy 350. How crazy. Energia and potency. In this paragraph, I will explore Aristotle's metaphysics and primarily focus on energia and potency. Potency can be thought of potentiality, in a way. Energia is being at work, somewhat like becoming while already having became. Well, I'm about to became all over this piece of paper because I was a badass kind of kid. Yeah, so this is Aristotle's universe. This is so crazy. Holy shit, this is awesome. Yo, this is wild. What did I write on here? The motion of the planets is everlasting, and everything is drawn from love and wonder. Dude, I've been described as optimistic before, and I'm totally feeling that right now. I feel we got to get into this video. I'm probably driving you nuts. So, unmoved mover. Let me just read a little more of my homework. Unmoved mover. Moved because it doesn't have any potency. This is fully actualized. Of course it is. Yeah, so Aristotle's idea, I believe, of God is it's an unmoved mover. It is that which is immovable that moves, right? This is why. So you want to know why when people say comedians are the modern day philosophers. This is why that's like kind of offensive to philosophers. Also, when I said that in the one video, I said that in a video recently, and people were like, that's actually, oh, in the Bert Kreischer video, and people were like, that's actually a Mark Norman joke. That's actually a Mark Norman joke. I don't listen to comedy anymore. I didn't know that, so I'm so sorry. People were like, you stole that. To steal implies you did it knowingly. Right? Let's get into the metaphysics of stealing. I didn't know. Maybe I knew in the past. All right, let's go. We're going to recalcify. We're going to calcify some more because I'm going to be honest, need some more energy. Earlier I felt like a Taurus. Now it's time to feel like an Aries because I'm an Aries-Taurus cusp. The only day of the year where you could actually be an Aries-Taurus cusp. Let's go. Oh, that's some calcification. Let's go. Oh, we can make our face so red. Oh. I feel like a ram. I feel like a crazy ram. Oh shit, the metaphysics of Red Bull. Could you imagine if I still drank? This channel would be insane. Thank God I don't. Thank God for sobriety. Thank you, God. Seriously. All right. So the way that I kind of describe my metaphysics is that it is almost the opposite of what the Gnostics believe. So what the Gnostics believe in a super short summary, in like one paragraph, I had ChatGPT write me a quick paragraph to paraphrase this. The Gnostics' metaphysics teaches that reality began as a perfect, infinite spiritual realm, where all divine truth existed in unity. So divine truth, it is a spiritual oneness, okay? From here, a lower being called the demiurge accidentally emerged and created the material world. When he created the material world, he called himself God of it. The physical world is seen as a flawed illusion or prison for the divine light that is trapped within human souls. Salvation comes through gnosis, spiritual awakening, or direct knowledge of one's divine origin. This allows the soul to ascend back beyond matter to the true eternal source. Gnostic cosmology sees the universe as a fallen copy of divine reality, and metaphysics is the path of remembering and returning to what is real. Now, this is basically what I think, but in an altered way. I think this is very close, but in reverse. This is why I say to Gnostics who often comment on my stuff, you're almost there. Because I was in the Gnostic realm for a while, but I moved beyond it, okay? And I'm going to explain why and how right now. A lot of my ideas on the physical reality stem and come from somebody named Ed Mabry. Ed Mabry has been on tons of conspiracy podcasts, Nephilim Death Squad, Tinfoil Hat, and I probably could get him on. So I think I might get him on the show because it would be an awesome conversation. But his idea of cosmology and some of his the things that he says and teaches have blown my mind, and they ring very true. Especially when I tie them in with my near-death experience, which I'm going to be doing a special on in the next 2 months. So that will be out soon. But so let's kind of talk about this. So with the advent of modern physics, we now know, not metaphysics, physics, we now know a lot of things we didn't know in the past. And one of the most interesting things, okay, that we have learned is the state of atoms, okay? Interestingly enough, philosophers of old, like Spinoza and Hume, and these older, they're called the modern philosophers, wrote about things called modes or nodules. And they basically had these ideas of atoms like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Super interesting stuff. One of the most interesting things about atoms is if you were to blow an atom up to the size of the tip of a pen, okay? So a ballpoint pen. The protons and the neutrons that encircle one another around the nucleus would be as far away from each other as an end zone in a football field. So 110 yards away. So if you had an atom, basically, literally, not even this big. This is a Sharpie. That's too big. It would need to be smaller than this. Smaller than even this. This is just a marker. Whatever. I'll open it and show you. So if you had an atom this size, the proton and neutron that would encircle the nucleus of the atom would be 110 yards away. So what is in the atom? What's inside of it then? Nothing. There's nothing inside of it. It's completely empty. So what does that mean? Okay, so here is an actual photo of an atom. So I'm gonna like get super nerd out here. So let's say the entire atom is the size of a football stadium. Okay, if the nucleus was a marble on the 50-yard line, inside of the nucleus, the protons and neutrons are packed together so tightly that you would need a microscope the size of Earth to separate them comparably. And the electrons that would be orbiting around would be half a mile away. They'd be half a mile away. Okay? But what is all of this other stuff that's it's empty. There's nothing in it. So now let's take that model and expand it just a little bit. If we increase the size of the nucleus to the size of a softball, the encircling protons and neutrons would be 7 miles away. Again, completely empty, which means the electrons would be, if it was half, I don't even know how far that would be. I'm not going to do that math right now. That's insane. It's completely empty otherwise. This means 99.9% of the atom is empty space. Now, remember, electrons encircle the atom, okay? They completely encircle the atom spinning around. Electrons operate at 1% the speed of light. They circle the Earth. If you took an electron and you went to spin it around the Earth, it would encircle the Earth in 18 seconds. Electrons are also completely massless. There is no mass to an electron whatsoever. Now, the actual part of the atom that contains mass, the protons and the neutrons, those are made up of 3 subatomic particles. Those subatomic particles are further made up of something called quarks. Quarks are basically just vibrations. So when you're wondering what matter is made of, atomically, literally the atoms are made up of 99% empty space. Now, this subatomic level, okay, where quarks are made up of vibrations, is where you get into string theory. String theory discusses that everything, every particle is just a tiny vibrating string of energy. Now, this is when you basically get to the quantum level. So just like in like Ant-Man, the Marvel movie where he gets to the quantum level and everything's super tiny, this is what they're talking about. If atoms are what make up reality and atoms don't have any mass, well then how come when I hit the table, my hand doesn't go through it? Well, some people theorize this is actually due to electromagnetism. Now, where does this come in? This comes in to what makes up the subatomic particles, which is gluons. Gluons is made up of the energy from electromagnetism, which is photons, which is light. Basically, you could argue, and physicists do believe, protons are made up primarily of light, which is super interesting because in the beginning, what did God say biblically? Let there be light. So basically, matter feels solid not because atoms are literally touching, but because of electromagnetic repulsion between their electrons. Every atom has negatively charged electrons in its outer shell. When you bring two objects close to one another, the electrons from each other repel each other. So just like when you were a kid and you would have magnets and you would like put them together and they would repel from one another, if you ever did that in school, that is why I can hold this can and it doesn't go through my hands. That is why I can chug the Red Bull and it's in my tummy tum, because it is electromagnetically being held up by my stomach. And on the fat cam, it all makes sense, right? If the parts of the atom are made up of light, what does this mean? If photons, which are light, only exist when being observed, this brings us to the quantum level. So, due to the double slit experiment and things like Schrodinger's cat, we now know if you had a cat in a box and a vial of poison in there, and you shot photons at this vial of poison, and it was to, explode and kill the cat, is the cat alive or dead? Well, we don't know because we can't observe the cat. Therefore, it is in a state of not dead, not alive. It is neither, right? Follow me. Another example of quantum mechanics is the double slit experiment. So imagine you're throwing tiny balls of light at a wall, and the wall has two doors cut into it. You would think the balls would just go through one door or the other and make two lines of the wall behind it. But when scientists did this with these little light electrons, they didn't get two lines. They got a bunch of lines that operated like ripples from waves bumping into each other. It's as if each tiny particle went through both doors at once, acting like a wave. But the weird part is when they put a camera to watch what door they went through, the pattern changed back to two perfect lines and the waves disappeared. Basically, the light operates in a way that in which it knows it is being observed. And these light particles act differently when they know that they're being watched. Essentially, reality only exists when we are observing it. Interestingly enough, philosophers like David Hume, who was like a super crazy atheist, had this same idea. Basically, reality doesn't exist unless you're observing it. So anything outside of my field of vision right now, or any of my five senses, literally does not exist. This is the ideas of David Hume. Very interesting because science actually does back this up. Now, so basically one could argue that we sort of live in a spiritual simulation. I don't like the idea of living in a simulation. That's not what I'm saying. But basically reality is holographic, okay? That's more of what I'm trying to say. That we are existing in something that is actually, conversely to what the Gnostics believe, immaterial. We live in an ethereal reality. We don't live in a material one, which is also why we have Lucifer, who is sort of like the ruler of this plane. That's how he's the god or deity of the airways. He is the deity of light, everything is made up of light. Everything is made up of air. Everything is 99% nothing. It's made up of ether. That's why we are literally in an etherical simulation. But wait, there's so much more. When we look at Genesis, how did God create the universe? Well, he spoke it, right? He spoke it. And if you read all of Genesis, the first chapter of Genesis is entirely a stanza. It's written in a stanza. It's a song. The entire thing is a song. So God is light. Light is energy. Light is infinite energy. And when we look to Genesis, we see that reality was spoken into existence, which subatomically makes sense because everything in existence is literally a vibration. The vibrations become light, etc. So that is the actual physical part of our reality, right? But where does this become metaphysical? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot more. Remember how when we look at a magical symbol, a pentagram, there are 5 different points on the star, each one representing a different element. Well, that's very interesting. Most people would assume that there are actually 4 elements: earth, wind, fire, water. Yeah, there we go. There's 4. Well, the 5th one they believe is aether, right? Well, when you manipulate aether, what do you get? That's how you get magic, right? So the manipulation of aether is actually how you get magic. And this is what a lot of esoteric occultists believe in and what they try to manipulate. Well, when you look at reality through this lens, it starts to make more sense and it starts to really line up because everything is made up of light. Now, this would mean one very interesting thing that conversely completely is the inverse of what the Gnostics would believe, which would mean that the spiritual realm would not be this light, ethereal thing that is of aether, that is less matter. It would be the opposite. It would mean that heaven and the spirit realms are actually more material. They are more solid, and that is actually what heaven is. It is actual real material, not the fake material that we live in on Earth. And there's more actual physics to back this up. And that is because in the 1980s, 2 scientists did a study. Their names were Barry Setterfield and Trevor Norman. Now, they were out of Australia. And they did a study that discussed and proved that the speed of light was actually slowing down. Now, if you know anything about modern physics is entirely based upon the fact that the speed of light is constant and that it is measurable. The speed of light is 186 miles per second. Constant and measurable. But these 2 scientists proved that the speed of light is slowing down. The speed of light is decaying. So what does this mean? Well, when we start to look at biblical history, it all starts to make sense and it all starts to add up. Well, the interesting thing is Barry Setterfield and Trevor Norman's ideas were completely dismissed because what they brought into it was the questioning of many scientific methods. But here's the thing. Their ideas were dismissed until 10 years later when a Russian scientist actually came forward and he proved this as well, that the speed of light was incrementally slowing down over time and that it is logarithmically, which means exponentially, slowing down. And over time, the disruption of the speed of light is expounding more and more and more and more. So the speed of light is exponentially slowing down. This right here is an exponential graph. This graph will show you that as time goes on, the speed of light is slowing down more and more and more and more as time goes on. Now, this is how compound interest works. So if you ever put money in like a savings account or something, or more of like a 401k, right? The first year, that 4% interest isn't that much. The second year, it's not that much. The third year, it's not that much. 15, 20 years down the line, you have a lot of money. That's how the speed of light slowing down works. And it works exponentially. So why is this problematic to modern science? Well, because what ends up happening is it destroys the entire model of how we understand the world and how we understand history. Due to this exponential logarithmic function, that means a year ago, the speed of light was a little bit faster. That means 10 years ago, it was a little bit faster, right? But this means when we rewind time and we go back to the time that when Christ walked the earth, this means the speed of light was actually 100 times faster than it is now. And if we rewind even more, that means that when Noah walked around 8,000 years ago, the speed of light was 10,000 times faster than it is today. That means that literally colors would have been brighter, they would have been more vivid, and the electrons that spin around the nucleus would have been spinning faster, 10,000 times faster. This means that the magnetic field was stronger. This means that people were literally stronger, they lived longer, and that they were capable of much greater things, like potentially, I don't know, building pyramids and things like that. Because if this is the case, and if we know through our studying of the Kabbalah and everything else, 90% of the black magic apparently went into Egypt. They were able to manipulate Aether using magic, and if it was 10,000 times stronger than it is now because the speed of light was decaying, come on, folks. What are we talking about here? Think about it. If everything is made up of light and the speed of light is slowing down, and 8,000 years ago, it would have been 10,000 times weaker than it is now, or stronger than it is now, the physical ramifications of this are crazy, because this means the magnetic field would have been 10,000 times stronger than it is today. When we start thinking about this neuroscience, I almost said neurotypically. If we think about the way the brain works, right? The way that thoughts works is electricity is passed between two things called gentrites. Gentrites are basically the two poles in which electricity is shot between for thoughts. Thoughts are literally electric. People would have thought faster. When you think, it is literally electricity. It's literally just physics. People would have thought faster. The ancients were way smarter than we are, okay? They were way smarter than us. And this equates for all of the amazing things that they were probably capable of doing that we're not capable of doing today. Think about all of the things that we cannot build now and all of this other stuff. The ancients had deeper connections to their reality. This is why they were experiencing literal beings and magic and all this other stuff. Because guess what the spiritual ramifications of this would be? This would mean when spiritual beings would pass into our realm, they're not passing through as these ghostly beings. They're actually passing through as being more material than we would be. Well, why? How does this make any sense? Think about it. If you're playing a video game, right? If you have an avatar character that is being represented by you in a video game, you are more physical than the video game. The game is an immaterial thing. It is the same thing when spiritual beings come into our reality. They are having to go down a totem pole in order to exist in a more ethereal realm. This realm is the realm of light and air. This is why, again, Lucifer is the chief deity of this playground. He's the god of the airwaves. That's what they say about him, right? Makes complete and total sense. Now, why did science originally reject this until it was brought forward by somebody else? So that was because these two scientists were extremely Christian, and they actually showed and proved that this proves that the Earth would not be more than a few thousand years old, and that it would basically disprove evolution entirely, because evolution requires millions and millions of years to happen. You have all of these, statistical improbabilities happening by chance over time, thousands, millions of them happening over millions and millions of years, right? But if time is slowing down and the speed of light is decaying, this means that radioactive carbon dating and the the dating that is used for potassium argite and carbon-14, this means that the half-life of the particular particles that are being used to study the rate of decay, those are done at the speed of light being constant. This means that the decay of these objects is actually happening faster. And this would mean the amount of time between these things, between when we are dating it and when it actually happened, would have actually been closer than what the carbon dating said it would be. Because remember, the speed of light is altering those particles. So it would actually be closer to us because the speed of light is slowing down. Now, this actually answers questions about how Adam and Eve would have been able to physically be in the presence of God, right? And how they could interact with him. They were the material representations of creation. And when they ate the forbidden fruit, this is when the speed of light began to decay. And this is when the second law of thermodynamics began. This is the breakdown over time of basically reality in and of itself. And this would explain the fall and how we were separated from God. This would be the sort of physical, like the physics behind the fall. Now, another massive breakaway from God would have been the flooding of Noah. Now, if you remember biblically, it talks about how Noah is basically sort of like the epoch of when the lives of people in the Bible began to shorten. And this would be another breakaway part. And this is when the speed of light would begin decaying faster as well. So the speed of light decaying basically changes our entire idea of what is happening in reality. And it explains how the timeline of Earth would basically biblically exist in its infancy, whatever, like 6,000 years, but being, billions and billions of years old. So it is both because of the way time is operating. Time is operating differently. And it also completely explains science's ideas of the heat death of the universe, which perfectly correlate with some of the letters that Peter wrote, where Peter writes that the elements are going to basically melt away. And he also writes that heaven and earth will fall away. Now, it's interesting because these ideas and the studies are often challenged not because they're wrong. They're challenged because they would change the entire way that we view physics. Now, when you look into it, and I found the name of the person who did the studies from Russia. His name was V.S. Troitsky. And he published a paper in 1987 titled Physical Constants and the Evolution of the Universe. And in his work, he argues that the speed of light was much higher in the past, and it has since decreased. But it's just so interesting that the reason that they don't like it is literally because it would change reality entirely. So it says that the proof of the decay is not strictly accurate, that the analysis is flawed, because when you look into what the ramifications of the speed of light not being constant would mean, it would literally change relativity. It would change the meaning of time and distance. It would change the timeline of the Big Bang. And that is something that they don't want. It says Setterfield, Norman, and later Troitsky touch something deeper than a physical constant. They question the cosmic foundation of time and light, which are the bedrock of both science and spirituality. If C wasn't constant, everything they proved would rewrite physics textbooks, cosmology, and even theological models of creation. That is existentially disruptive, and the scientific establishment is invested in these stable frameworks. And when we think about how dogmatic science really, really is, it seems like that could actually be the real problem with this being a widespread, widely accepted theory. When changing the constant speed of light, that is a metaphysical axiom of our current paradigm. It defines the limits of causality, perception, and communication. To say light itself is changing is to hint that reality itself is evolving, that we live in a dynamic rather than static cosmos. That is a profound intuition, one that mystics, not physics, often articulate better. So, the dogmatic science, it's great. The scientists often get so perturbed at, the religiosity of religion is so bad because, dude, this is like when you look into this and you ask AI what it believes, why this is not real and why this is not, even though they have empirical studies that show that the speed of light is decreasing over time, it's so scared of this question, right? I mean, we live in a reality. We as a self-proclaimed mystic, and I think I've earned the mystic title, it is clear and obvious to say that reality is indeed changing constantly. Think about this. I want you to think about this. Talking to Ian Ferguson introduced me and many to the idea that there are different consciousnesses that operate within reality. There's the Malachian consciousness, the lowest frequency. There's the middle frequency, which is the Luciferian consciousness. And then there's the most high consciousness, the consciousness of God. Now, this is obviously very like New Age, Ian says that he communes with angels, a lot of stuff like that. Ian's a great dude. I'm not disparaging him when I say that. But he talks about Vedic astrology, and he uses Vedic astrology. And his Vedic astrology ideals actually help me to come up with the Aeon of Lucifer, which is what I believe this age that we are currently in is, right? It coincides with the age of Aquarius, and it coincides with the ideas of great year. Plato had the ideas of great years, which are astrological ages that coincide with the zodiac, right? This age of Aquarius is one of air. Aquarius is an air sign, and it's following the age of Pisces, right? Pisces, has a ton to do with Christ, the multiplying of the fish, the Christian symbol of fish, tons of other things. Him discussing and telling Peter, to go and fish for followers, all of this stuff. But Ian Ferguson says that with the Vedics, you can basically prove different yuga cycles. Well, he literally says that on March 21st, we were going to be slipping into the age of Lucifer. That's what he called it. I call it the Aeon of Lucifer. I believe it's a little different. I have different caveats, right? Well, 30 days after that, I released my first quote-unquote musical project, official one. And I knew it was going to be a big day. That was the day that the Pope died. The Pope died on that day. And I literally knew that it was going to signify something big. I could just tell. And you can feel it, dude, with the Trump presidency, with this entire year. Something feels different. Something is different. And not a lot of people can pinpoint what it is, but it all coincides with, I think, that we officially slipped into the age of Aquarius. I think we officially slipped into the Aeon of Lucifer. I think it has to do with this yuga shift. things are really ramping up and things are really changing, and they're changing quickly. And I think that this has something to do with it. I think this has something to do with it, because if the speed of light is indeed decaying, this means spiritually everything is changing. This means everything is changing, and it gives a physical interpretation to this. It gives a physics interpretation and a physics bedrock to everything that I'm saying. So when I said that this is my metaphysics, I guess I was kind of a little wrong. It's more of my physics, right? But I guess there's metaphysical aspects to it as well. Who knows? Who knows? All I know is science definitely doesn't want to change the rules. They definitely don't want any change, because that would mean that they've been wrong for a very long time. And that means all those giants and all of those dragons are hiding in the Smithsonian. That would mean that they're not as old as they think, and that all of these Neanderthals and all of the other fake bones that they have, that are the bones of the Nephilim and everything else, that would make things a lot different. Quite literally change everything. It would quite literally change the entire universe. So what do you think? Do you think there is a possibility that this almost inverse Gnostic metaphysics could be real, and that these physicists might have been onto something and might have proved something? Or do you believe the speed of light is constant, even though the speed of light being constant then completely contradicts one of the biggest theories that there is within science, which would be the heat death of the universe, which they say is being caused by entropy and everything burning off and dying off, which happens because of why? Is it because the speed of light's slowing down? Let me know your thoughts. So doing this video, I kind of realized this isn't really my metaphysics. This is more of just my physics. So, hey, we all get something wrong every once in a while. This is just more strictly my it's literally just the physics that I think is right. So, hey, we calcified, we double seed, we double calcified today. You know what I mean? So, whatever, but we learned that this is actually my physics, not my metaphysics, but I guess it is kind of metaphysics too. It's a little bit of my metaphysics, because I believe the spirit realm is probably the actual material realm, because this all perfectly makes sense when you think about what Lucifer literally does, especially with what we're moving towards with this new Aeon of AI, Wi-Fi, you know, the age of Aquarius, which is an age of air. I mean, we're literally in it feels like, you know, it feels like we're real aired out, you know, we feel like a total airhead. Like I'm a total airhead for stuff like this. And I think that we're definitely in an air age, where it's an air age, total airhead, total air guy. I'm an air guy, I'm an air bud. I'm an air buddy. And you know, it would just make sense, especially when we think about, you know, we think about it, when you really think about it.